special guest on Adam Ashton. Thanks for being here, man. Welcome. How are you doing?
Awesome, mate. Thanks for having me, man. I've enjoyed checking out the first couple of eps of your show, mate. It's sounding great, and I look forward to hearing many, many more episodes.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So tell a little about your whole podcasting journey, because obvious we know you from what you will learn, but tell us how did it got started?
Yeah, so it started. The reason being was me and my mate, also called Adam. We were coming to the end of our uni degrees. We'd both sort of, done pretty well in school. Went to good school, got good grades, got into a
Awesome.
good course, got a good degree, got a good job. All the traditional, conformist, safe path, I guess. We're on that track.
Mm-hmm.
But then we started reading books, and we started to, things like Rich Dad Poor Dad and
All right.
4 Hour Work Week and Crush It and Millionaire Fast Lane. All these books that gave us like a different taste that we weren't used to. And the first time you read some of those books, it really opens your eyes to a whole new world. And we thought, holy shit, if there's stuff out there and like in this one book can completely change your mind, what other books are out there that
Right.
we
Yeah.
can
Right.
start to learn from too? Yeah, so we started reading a lot more, and we would then, we'd meet once a week and talk about it. And we thought, well, we're at it. If we're already talking about, we're already reading, we may as well start our own podcast. So we started a podcast called What You Will Learn, where each week we read a book and sort of review the best bits. And for us, we sort of started as a real test, like a bit of a trial. We committed to doing 10 episodes,
Mm-hmm.
and that was it. Then we were going to reassess, and we thought, okay, what's the very worst case here? If we try to look at limiting the downside, the very worst case scenario is we read 10 great books. So we're reading more books more regularly, more often. We're retaining more because we have to talk about it rather than just read it for ourselves.
Right.
And, we're going to probably improve our confidence a bit. We're going to become sort of better at communicating. And then, so we had all these benefits. As the absolute worst case, we do 10 episodes and then stop.
And then you already are.
Maybe somebody listens and we keep going.
All right, man. That's awesome. So where are you now? You're like 3 years in or something, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that was like sort of mid 2016. So yeah, coming up to 3 years now.
Awesome, man. So how much listeners are you right now per month?
So we just cracked 500,000, and so that was sort of a it was a big and I got to say, man, but I should qualify that by saying that we started with literally zero.
Mm-hmm.
So we started, the first episode had like 3 downloads, and that was me, my co-host, and my mum. So we weren't, like Tim Ferriss, he already had a massive audience, and
Mm-hmm.
when he started, there was already people listening, and he's grown massive, obviously, and all credit to him. But we were literally just two random dudes. Had nothing to go for, coming straight out of uni. Nobody knew us. No one was listening, and we started from zero and very, very, very slowly built up. And it was just that, we've been doing it every week now for almost 3 years and constantly trying to improve and constantly trying to get better and slowly, slowly, slowly building up.
That's awesome, man. So where do you want to take this? Like in a few years, what are your plans with the podcast?
I think at the very start, so in my, the journey I sort of talked about of going from the traditional path to
Mm-hmm.
seeing a different path, I was definitely in a rush early on in terms of I wanted to do everything quickly, get massive quickly, make lots of money quickly, build everything big quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm definitely taking a much more long-term approach. So I guess that's a roundabout way of saying I don't really have a specific target, but we want to keep growing, obviously, keep reaching more people. And it's at the moment, it's still, man, completely a hobby in the sense that we're not really making anything substantial. And when you factor in sort of the costs of everything, we're definitely losing money by making the podcast. But we're confident that in the longer term, there's something there for us.
Right. All right. That's super cool, man. So for the listeners at home, I made a few dot points for why you need to start a podcast. So the first one, you just heard it. Podcasts are fucking popular. Second one, your personal brand will grow enormously and you can build an audience. So let's say you're sick and you need a kidney. Those wait lists are incredibly long. When you have an audience, people will want to help you. And besides that, that's a weird example, but it just feels good to help a lot of people. So third one, you get a chance to meet with successful people. So if it wasn't for the podcast, Adam and I wouldn't be talking right now. Well, he's an awesome guy, but a lot of people, like interviews I did in the past, I wouldn't be talking with those guys if it wasn't for the podcast. So super cool thing. It's a great networking opportunity. Fourth one, you develop your speaking, presentation, and communication skills. So go to an interview of The Rock from 20 years, for example. He was a nobody. He was like, it was just stupid. There was nothing charismatic about that. But when you look at him right now, he talked to so much people and he put himself out there that he got those skills. So he's a fucking charismatic motherfucker at the moment. So great one. So yeah, last part, Adam's tips for starters. What can you tell us, like, what are the things you learned in those 3 years that most helped you?
I think the first and foremost, the biggest, most obvious thing it's easy to say, it's hard to do, but in terms of everything is to just do it, is to just start. You got to realize that at the start, you're not going to be very good and you can't expect to be perfect the first time, but it's important to just get out there and start and do your first one. And it's probably going to be shit. Ours was very shit at the start. And if you commit to doing it, though, you'll keep tweaking and keep getting better along the way as you go. Each time you get better, but it's important to obviously just start. So that's a big one. The other one I think is super important for getting started is to have a reason that you're doing it and see benefits to doing it that isn't just getting massive and having a massive audience and making shitloads of money, because that'd be great if it happened. But it's sort of, if that's all you're doing it for, you're going to get, 6 episodes in, you're going to have 3 people listening and you're going to give up. Whereas if you can see these other benefits, like for us, it's reading more, retaining more, learning more, connecting with awesome guests that we've been able to speak to, improving our speaking, improving our confidence, and all of these other benefits aside from just money, then it's kept, I guess that's the fuel then that keeps us going, as opposed to if we were just doing this for money, we would have stopped a long time ago because we're certainly not there yet. So I think there are a couple of big ones. One is to get started, and another one is to seek those benefits, non-monetary benefits, to keep you going.
What are those for you? Like a few.
Yeah, for me, it's we've been able to speak to some of our absolute idols, and I feel like podcasting is like an absolute networking hack, because you can just imagine. So one is Seth Godin was my all-time favorite author. He's got some awesome books like The Dip, Tribes, Linchpin, What to Do When It's Your Turn, This Is Marketing, all these sick books that I loved.
Right.
And if you emailed Seth Godin and said, "Yo, Seth, I'm a young dude from Australia. Can I call you on the phone and speak to you for 45 minutes?" He'd probably say no, I'd guess, or he might not even respond. Who knows? But by us saying, "Hey, Seth, we love your work. We've been doing it for the last 12 months. Every week we've been reading a book and sharing the best stuff. And we've also interviewed A, B, and C person that you know and respect as well. And this is what we were thinking. We've got a couple of listeners. If we call you up and speak to you on the phone for 45 minutes and then we record it, we'll share it on our podcast, and a couple of hundred people are going to hear it," he's much more likely to say yes. So it's just such a networking hack, rather than just you being a random guy or girl with nothing to show for it. Almost nobody's going to just take a 45-minute phone call from you. But if you can say, "Hey, I've got a podcast," the probability goes through the roof.
Right. So was it like a breakthrough point for you when asking speakers? Because right now I'm DMing and emailing people, and a few say yes. I had a few great interviews done, but a lot don't even respond. So was there like an amount of listeners or people you got on when they were like, "Yeah, I do want to come on"?
Yeah, dude, it was a slow grind. It took us 6 months before we even got the first one person. So you're way ahead of us in that regard. But it was literally 6 months before we got our first one. It was probably even 7, closer to 7.
Right.
And we finally cracked that first person who said yes. And then what we actually had a VA. I was listening to one of your earlier apps. You said you had a virtual assistant as well. So we had a VA where we'd list 50 people. She'd do the email. She'd find them and reach out to them. And she'd send out 50 emails, and we'd get one person would reply and say yes. And then like we'd send another 50, and then maybe like 4 people would reply, and we'd end up getting 2 interviews. And then we'd send another 50, and maybe we got 5 or 6 interviews. So it was just that real gradual build up of getting more and more people and more better people. And then once you have a few names of other recognizable people, I think it gets easier. Yeah, so I think there's a few things in terms of getting guests. I think a couple of important ones. You need to sort of get to the right person. Like a lot of the time we're just speaking to their assistant or speaking to a publicist or something, and they blow us off because they don't really care. You need to sort of get them at the right time. Like say some of the guests we've had, like Dan Pink, Dan Heath, some great authors, they were launching a new book. And so it was sort of a good timing that we spoke to them at the right time when they were wanting to promote something. So the right person, the right time are a couple of important things, and asking in the right way is obviously important. So you've got to be sort of careful how you ask that. And then I think it also comes a bit of like credibility. So obviously if you're Joe Rogan, you're getting tens of millions of downloads, anyone's going to say yes to Joe Rogan just about. But if you're, just like us starting out with no listeners, our credibility had to come from somewhere else. So the credibility could come from, hey, I've interviewed A, B, and C person already. So that's sort of a bit of proof that you're all right. Or another one for us was just constantly doing it every single week. So we can say, hey, we've already done 50 episodes. Because a lot of people at the start were like, people have done it before, and maybe their show lasts 6 episodes and it stops and nobody hears it ever again. But by us showing, hey, we've done it every week for the last year and we're going to keep going, there was a bit of credibility there as well.
Right. I had that. I was in the DMs with Dean Graziosi from Millionaire Habits. You know the book?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great author. So I was in the DMs with him. I was like, do you want to get on the podcast? He was, well, who did you get on? So I gave him a few names, and then he just completely ignored me, but I see now why.
But mate, I think that's, in terms of timing, I think you've done well, because he had a new book sort of somewhat recently, and he's all over the shop in terms of promoting himself. And honestly, man, I think it's probably just a matter of time. For you getting a response already, that's a great start. And then from you in 6 months' time, if you try again and say, hey, I've already done 30 episodes now and I've got these other 3 people, then maybe that's a step in the right direction.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much for this. I really appreciate this. I do. He actually, for the listeners, he helped me putting together like the whole book review. So I didn't know how I did that. So I gave him a call. He just helped me. So I really appreciate it, man. Thank you.
No worries, mate. And they're sounding strong as well. As I said, I listened to the first couple and I'm liking how you're doing it, man. So keep it up.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. All right. I think that was the episode.
Yep. I love it, mate. Keep up the good work, man. As I said, man, it's just a matter of getting started, getting that first 10 out there, and then you'll stick with it. It'll keep growing. It sounded like you had a couple of listeners already, which is great, man. As I said, we started at 0, so it's definitely possible.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Once again, thank you so much. Enjoy your day, man.
No worries, mate. Keep in touch, man.
I'll do.
See you, mate.
All right, bye-bye.